Hey everyone, it's Will, GamerDad, with another video for you. So, my friend who has guest starred on this channel before was lucky enough to hit EVA 4-star in 2 Keystones. So, not only do I have to hate him for that, I am borrowing his account in order to do a 5-star review of EVA. We'll do a little bit of gameplay, and I'll let you know my initial thoughts of what I think about her. Normally I would ask the most important question of all, however, at this point, she is definitely not hot. She didn't come home to me, so whatever about that. Alright, so that being said, she is a Magic Zone setter. You can see that she could deploy Magic Fate Stance, power down 30%, physical resistance to all party members up 30% for 1 turn. Now, as our third Water Zone setter, pretty good, especially against physical type enemies. Note that if she is in the front line, she does activate Lunatic right off the bat, and she still has an additional Lunatic button you can press. So there is an advantage of having her in the front line versus VCing her in. That being said, let's go over some of her moves here. Icicle Zorch is one of her spam moves for her water. She is a water crystal unit. XL single target, inflicts break, crit rate. This is magic crit rate, by the way. 100% for 3 moves. After the attack, if the enemy is higher than 50% HP, attack again. And keep in mind that her Lunatic is Crystal, which is copy, so you can actually get 4 hits on it. Note that because she starts with Lunatic, when she is in Lunatic, Strength times 4, Int and Speed stackable up to 4 hits. So again, on the first turn, you can literally get 4 stacks right off the bat. Very, very easy to power her up and have her deal some massive damage. Lucent Magi is her crystal single target enemy. This is a unique one in that if the enemy has resistance, increase the skill strength to 20 times damage. Now, my understanding is that if the enemy is resistant to your element, it only does a quarter damage, and so technically, quarter times 20 would be 5 times normal damage, which is actually not too bad. And if the enemy is higher than 50%, you can get a dual debuff power and int for 3 turns. I think this will be very situational. However, if you do need a dual debuffer on your Magic team, not bad at all. Very, very versatile. And like I said, it's not a strong attack for some of the end game content anyway, so the dual debuff will come into handy. Astro Drago is her spam move for Crystal. Note that this one did not boost her speed and int. You'll have to probably do the Icicle Zorch first. That being said, Astro Drago, AoE, Crystal, guaranteed crit, increased damage as you have less enemies on the board, and again it will copy again. So note that her theme is essentially that if the enemy has more than 50% HP, it will attack again. In my initial playtest, it actually means 50% or more. So if you have 50% HP stopper, it will still work and you'll get 2 hits or 4 hits depending on Lunatic or not. She does have some other small moves in her kit. You can obviously adjust them as needed. Mana Surf is a pretty standard MP recovery. Glint Purge and Glacial Veil are also very, very interesting. This one is Crystal Magic single target, and it decreases enemies resistance, AoE mind you, 25% for 4 stacks, and remember she can get 4 hits if the enemy is higher than 50% HP. And finally, Glacial Veil. This is the one that actually gives herself mental focus, only in Lunatic though, so keep that in mind. So if she runs out of Lunatic, these moves actually do drop quite a bit in value. However, in Lunatic, she already gives herself 50% essentially water crystal type attack for all party members, and it's a heal as well. So yeah, very, very useful. She can set up a lot of things herself. I mean, as a support, she can help you dual debuff. She can increase your magic attacks for your whole team for the water and crystal, decrease water and crystal type resistance for your whole team to fight the enemy better, and so on and so forth. So yeah, really, really good. Again, as I'm reviewing her, man, I am extremely jealous of my friend, but let's be honest, he's also missed twice on banners, 14k on Radius, 15k on AS Rosetta, and so I guess he's getting some revenge on getting this Magic Zone setter versus not having AS Rosetta. Alright, so let's take one for a spin. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So, we can definitely use the heal first to set up, and again, note that you can see that kind of sparkling around her. She starts off with Lunatic right off the bat, and so, you know, whatever she's going to hit, note that because she gave herself mental focus with that move, she's doing like, you know, million damage, no problem at all. And remember that even though she has Pain Grasta, we haven't even set Pain on the enemy yet. This is damage before those Pain modifiers. Okay, so this is the one that does the dual debuff. Note that the enemy is not resistant, but is still was able to, you know, do the dual debuff because it's more than 50% HP on the enemy. So again, very, very versatile in that sense. Now, let's take her up against something a little bit harder than what I usually take on. I mean, I expect her to do extremely well against enemies weak to water. And so we're going to go right directly to the Salamander in Purgatory. Now, keep in mind, this boss has been power crept to oblivion before at 5 or 10 million HP. It was pretty difficult to take on with your team. However, at this point that you're re-challenging it, it's not nearly so difficult. But that being said, normally we bring a whole team against Salamander. In this case, we're just bringing her by herself. And mind you, again, we do not have a Pain setter on this team. She has Pain Grasta, but she does not have any Pain setting. And so the numbers you see are actually going to be worse than expected. Now that being said, we set up with the Glacial Veil. Again, remember we're giving herself mental focus, increased damage, and just like that, you know, boom, he's done. Like, even though it didn't get 4 hits in, because obviously the first hit brought it down past HP 50%, you're winning already. So I guess the great thing about her, at any point in the game, you can actually use her. Against more difficult fights, you're going to have that quad hit. Against weaker fights, you're just going to finish it off, because Crystal Lunatic, again, 2 hits regardless, right? So what we're doing here is we're going to test out the capabilities of that resistant move. Remember that obviously it can do a dual debuff. I want to see how much damage it can do actually. And there you go, 4.6 million. We did set Pain there with Horai Jewel. Unfortunately, AS Chio took one for the team, but you can see the capabilities. Easy kill against some of the earlier manifests in the fight. Okay, but what about enemies who are weak to either crystal or magic, water, which are her specialties? Now, first of all, note that in each of these examples, I'm not using her to VC in, because what happens is, if you VC in, you will have to activate her Lunatic that right off the bat. If you leave her up front and you have a secondary Magic Zone setter or Water Zone setter, you can have her in Lunatic, so you have 3 full turns to use whatever moves you want in order to win the game. Keep in mind, note that the break status actually stayed while she was attacking, and it's still there even after the attack. So I'm not sure if that's a glitch, or whether or not it actually continues to stay there for those 4 hits, and only someone else hitting on the next turn, either herself or someone else, will clear that status. So I'm not sure if it's a glitch, but it leads to some really interesting mechanics where if you get that in, you're going to have that break status while you're still dealing tons and tons of damage. Also, note that during the AF, you do have some limitations on Crystal. And I'll show you that in the next example. Okay, so we did do a AF. We actually got our zone cancelled, and we still punched right through the fire zone. This Terranivium obviously is weak to Crystal, and you know what? Even with that, we were able to clear off the smaller mob Artificial Spirit. And again, this is not really optimized loadout or optimized team. Remember that this is actually my friend's account. His account, even though it's been developed quite well in terms of collecting Chrono Stones and collecting, you know, like keys and light and shadow and stuff like that, he hasn't done any of these fights, and so I didn't really want to go through all the time in kind of optimizing his team, even buying and dormanting Grasta. He hasn't done any of that, because if you remember him guest starring on an earlier video, he doesn't really have as much time as I do. I mean, yeah, I actually do play a lot more Eden than he does, and he just runs keys, but hey, I even helped him get an award. I mean, what are good friends for, right? Okay, so here's the loadout. Keep in mind that we don't have access to void weapons or prismatics, and so if you're wondering why I'm not using them, my friend doesn't have those unlocked. He has not started Complex Dream either. That being said, look, he does have the 255 Clark, so he has been putting in the time to burn those keys. And again, the rest of the loadout, Meryl, as standard, will carry the Grasta staff for Eva. So obviously there is no crystal Grasta sharing, only water staff, and so there is a little bit of limitations. Now, we don't even have a full AF bar, but I wanted to actually kind of show you how the crystal lunatic mechanic works in terms of charging up the bar. Note that the copied move itself does give it extra charge. However, the second hit within it does not. One, so that's a copy, and so you get 2 charges with those 4 hits. Now, as I said before, normally when you copy a move during Lunatic Crystal, the second hit doesn't get an AF charge. In the case of her having Lunatic plus that double attack from the mechanic where she has more than 50% HP against the enemy, you do get 2 AF charges. Not sure if it's the first and third hit or the second and fourth hit. Either way, just know that as long as the enemy has more than 50% HP, you'll get 2 charges on the AF. And again, she's still an active Lunatic. Note that you got 4 stacks of that water and crystal resist debuff right out the bat. And so you have an easy way to set up. You can use the crystal resistance debuff or water resistance debuff. You can use a water crystal type attack. You could obviously, if you're using crystal attacks, you attack with the quad hit water spam move to get the stacks of int and speed, and then you would do the alternate move depending on how you want to set up. One last thing I will say is, on longer fights, she's going to have a few limitations. Obviously, her Lunatic only lasts 3 turns up front, and you can't choose when it starts. It starts right away at 3 turns right from the start. However, she does have an additional Lunatic mechanic where she can press the button again. So she actually has 2 Lunatic rounds. One that starts a battle with 3 turns, and then you can press the Lunatic just like any other Lunatic and activate it that way. So you got actually 6 turns, give or take. And if you do grind out that power Benefique, which you saw earlier on the Grasta from the Terranivium, you can actually extend the Lunatic by 2 turns, which I guess would mean 10 turns instead of 6, because it's 3 times 2, it will become 5 times 2. Anyways, note that she is in crystal mode, so that wasn't a quad hit, that was only a double hit because it's below 50% HP now. But, you know, you win the game, and if you note the power DPS on her, like I said, not too much setup, not even super optimized, and she's just blowing things away. Because remember, even in Water Zone, she can cast Mental Focus on herself, which is actually a really huge advantage over traditional Magic Zone setters that, for example, like the earliest one, AS Rosetta, can only cast Mental Focus during her Magic Zone, whereas this one can be Mental Focus outside any zone, and it just works as long as she's in Lunatic. Same setup. Meryl is carrying Grasta, and Chio's just, she's just hanging. Alright. And I should really upgrade my unit eventually. So, in conclusion, Eva, man, at first glance, she already looks extremely powerful, extremely broken. I imagine she would do even better with the likes of ES Nagi. She has a lot of versatility, plays well in Magic Zones, Water, Crystal. I mean, you can see that even on a less developed account, can do tons and tons of damage. Anyways, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.